There's a specific kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. It's the loneliness of being in a room full of people, laughing when they laugh, nodding when they nod, doing everything right, and still feeling like you're watching it all through glass. You're there, but you're not there. And the strangest part is, you can't explain it to anyone. Because from the outside, everything looks fine. You showed up, you smiled, you made conversation. So what's the problem? The problem is that you've spent your entire life carrying a feeling that nobody has a name for. This is called the outsider experience, and psychology has been quietly studying it for decades. Not loudly, not in mainstream self-help books, but in research labs, in clinical notes, in the work of people who actually wanted to understand why some humans never feel like they belong, no matter how hard they try. We talk about belonging like it's a simple thing, like if you just put yourself out there enough, smile enough, say the right things in the right rooms. Eventually, it'll click. Eventually, you'll feel it. That warm, easy sense of being home around other people. But for a certain kind of person, that feeling never comes. And the reason isn't what most people assume. It's not a childhood wound that needs healing. It's not social anxiety that needs managing. It's not introversion or shyness or some personality quirk that therapy will eventually fix. It's something much more fundamental. Their brain is wired to observe where others absorb, to question where others accept, to stand at the edge of every room and watch, while everyone else is simply living inside it. And understanding why that happens and what it actually means is what we're going into today. In the early 2000s, a psychologist named Kipling Williams ran a series of experiments on social exclusion. What he found genuinely shocked researchers at the time. Being left out, being ignored, being excluded from a group activates the exact same pain centers in the brain as physical injury. Not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech, literally. Same neural pathway, same signal, same response. Social exclusion and a broken bone are identical to your brain. Think about what that actually means. When someone leaves you on red, when you're not invited, when you walk into a room and feel invisible, your brain processes that with the same urgency as a physical wound. That's not sensitivity. That's not being too emotional. That's biology doing exactly what it was designed to do. Because thousands of years ago, being cast out from the tribe meant death. Not metaphorical death, literal death. 3 days alone in the wild, and you were gone. So the brain learned to treat social exclusion as an existential threat. And that wiring hasn't changed. We carry that ancient alarm system into offices and group chats and house parties. So when someone grows up perpetually on the outside, when that alarm keeps going off year after year in every social situation, their nervous system eventually recalibrates around that threat. It stays in a permanent, low-grade state of emergency. Every conversation carries a hidden question underneath it. Every room has a background signal. Am I safe here? Am I about to be pushed out? This is where the overthinking comes from. The hypervigilance, the inability to just relax around people, even when nothing is technically wrong. The outsider's brain isn't being dramatic. It's doing its job. The problem is that the job was designed for a world that no longer exists. Psychologists Baumeister and Leary called this the belongingness hypothesis. Their argument was that belonging isn't optional. It's as fundamental as food and water, a basic human need. And when that need goes chronically unmet, the person doesn't just feel sad, they adapt. They develop a whole psychological architecture around the absence of belonging. And that architecture, that way of moving through the world, is what makes someone an outsider. Now here's where it gets more interesting, because Carl Jung spent a significant part of his career thinking about exactly this kind of person. Jung had a concept he called the persona, the mask we wear for society, the version of ourselves we perform in public. Agreeable, appropriate, predictable, safe. Most people slip into their persona automatically, so automatically that they don't even notice they're performing. The mask and the face become the same thing. But the outsider sees the mask, something in them, some stubborn, uncomfortable part of their psychology, refuses to stop seeing it. And the moment you see the mask for what it is, wearing it starts to feel like lying, like a betrayal of something that you can't quite name, but can't quite ignore either. So they either wear it badly, awkwardly, transparently, like clothes that don't fit, or they stop wearing it altogether. Jung believed this wasn't a defect. He believed it was actually a sign of a more developed psyche. The person who questions the persona is closer to what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming fully, authentically yourself, rather than the self-society constructed for you. But the cost of that is brutal, because society doesn't run on authenticity. It runs on personas, on smooth social performance, on everyone agreeing to play their assigned role without too much friction. You withdraw the mask. You withdraw the connection. You stop performing, and people start calling you cold, intense, too much, not enough, difficult. The outsider isn't incapable of fitting in. They're incapable of pretending. And in the modern social world, those two things have become almost identical. Albert Camus understood this. He wrote a character that captures it better than any psychology paper ever could. Meursault, the protagonist of The Stranger, a man who simply can't perform the emotions society expects from him. He doesn't cry at his mother's funeral. He doesn't pretend the world contains more meaning than he can actually feel. He doesn't manufacture warmth or grief or enthusiasm on demand. He just observes, flatly, honestly, exactly as things are, and society destroys him for it. Not for anything he actually did wrong, not for being cruel or dishonest or harmful, but for the failure to perform grief the way people needed to see it, for breaking the social contract that says you will feel what you're supposed to feel when you're supposed to feel it. Camus was making a philosophical point about absurdity and freedom, but the psychological point underneath it is sharper. The outsider's actual crime, in most cases, is just honesty. The refusal to feel what they don't feel. The refusal to want what they're supposed to want. The refusal to participate in a performance that everyone else has agreed to call real life. The world can forgive a lot of things. It can forgive dishonesty. It can forgive cruelty. But authenticity, real, unperformed, uncomfortable authenticity, that makes people uneasy. It acts like a mirror, and most people don't want to see their own reflection that clearly. So the outsider gets punished, not for being bad, for being real. But here's the thing that always gets buried underneath all of that pain. The thing nobody talks about when they talk about the outsider experience. Being outside the room gives you a view that people inside the room can never have. When you're inside, you're participating, you're reacting, you're absorbed, but you're not seeing. The person outside the room sees the dynamics, the unspoken rules, the performances everyone is running without realizing they're running them. The things nobody says but everybody means. The gap between what people claim to be and what they actually are. And this isn't just poetic. Research consistently shows that socially marginalized people score higher on creative thinking, pattern recognition, and original thought. The psychological distance from the group, the very thing that causes all the suffering, is also the thing that produces insight. The same mechanism, the same distance. It cuts both ways. Darwin was socially isolated for most of his adult life. Kafka had almost no social world. Tesla chose aloneness deliberately and completely. Van Gogh was incomprehensible to everyone around him. Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Dostoevsky. Nearly every person who fundamentally changed how we see the world was operating from the outside, from the edge, from behind the glass. Society rejected them, then quietly borrowed their ideas, then built museums in their name, and put their faces on posters, and taught their work in schools. The outsider's curse and the outsider's gift are not two different things. They are the exact same thing seen from two different angles. So if you've felt this your whole life, outside the room, watching through glass, present, but never quite there, here's the only thing that actually matters. It is not a failure. It is not something broken in you waiting to be fixed. Your brain observes where others participate, questions where others accept, feels where others perform. That is not a flaw in the system. That is the system working exactly as it built itself. The pain is real. The loneliness is real. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But the outsider who stops spending all their energy trying to force their way into a room that was never designed for them and starts building something from the outside instead. That is where the interesting things have always happened. The room was never built for you. And maybe if you look at the whole of human history, maybe that's not the tragedy you always thought it was. Maybe that's the whole point.